Happy last day of fall. Everybody, this is Tech Talk Tuesday. Charlie's in on one. Thank you, Charlie. We'll talk to you guys for a minute while we let everybody sign up. Thank you, Cash. That's great. All we need is Charlie. Yay. Hello, Charlie E. It's GB3. Yep. Hey, man, it's the last day of fall. Tomorrow, the 21st, is the first day of winter. Hey, Joshua, I know you guys know it's already cold and it's already winter time, it seems, but I just wanted you to know officially by the ones in charge of the solstice, the winter starts tomorrow. Hey, Charlie. Hey, David. Hey, Ed. Man, Harold, thank you guys for tuning in. I appreciate you. Good stuff again every week. I feel like I've got some pretty good stuff. A lot of times I go kind of wing it off the cuff, and it seems to be pretty good when I do, but I get a couple of ideas during the week that I might want to share with you guys. And one thing I have realized every time I go and do a Tech Talk Tuesday with you guys and talk about the things I've learned, it almost always comes back to the great college days I had in education of the motorsports industry. And it wasn't really college, but Jackie and I spent 4 years with Team Winston, and we were very thankful we did. But what was great about those days is it allowed us to work 24/7 on making more horsepower and building a team effort. It was great to have the connections to the NASCAR teams that has lasted for a lifetime. It's great to have Gary Selzy and Alan Johnson as our teammates with the Top Fuel car, and for us to put a pro stock motorcycle in the Top Fuel car pits for a few seasons, which brought fans to our team and to pro stock motorcycles that no one ever really thought about. I mean, the ones that watch me and know John Myers, the late great John Myers, and the late great Dave Schultz, and Gino Scali, and all these other champions, Matt Smith, and all these guys that have done so good over the years. One thing that was great is how we were able to make some connections in the really popular world, like these die-cast motorcycles. When we got this red and white one, and then this silver one for the S2 paint scheme, these die-cast numbers back in 1999 and 2000 and 2001, the amount they made on these, the company, I think they were called Action Collectibles. Let's see what it says. Yeah, Action Collectibles. But they made numbers that were bigger than some NASCAR teams because of the popularity and the growth of our sport. Now, this Tech Talk Tuesday is not about sponsorship, and it's not about the girl or the guys or the drivers as much as it is about the technology of all this. Hey, Daryl and Jesse and Wes, but I would not be doing the entire process justice if I didn't allow some of this to realize that the unfair advantage we had. I had several unfair advantages. I had a rookie named Angel Sampace. She was her daddy's name at the time. I think, well, her first husband was Sealing. Kevin Sealing was a great guy. I got to know him. And she came in as a rookie with a really hungry for growing and the sport and learning about the process, and she wanted to be good at it. She told me that she wanted to qualify at a race one day. And then she said one day, I'd like to maybe win a round one day and maybe get to the semis one day, and maybe one day even win a race. And if I do it for 10 years, maybe I can win a championship. And I've seen her dreams come true every year because of how this is all going. But like I said, this is not about Action and Racing Collectibles. You're exactly right, Scott. Hey, Doug, Mike, and my friends over there, Jim Bob. I just wanted to tell you, I'm not going to make it about that. I just want to tell you that it created a position for us to run the dyno every day, for us to order parts. It developed cams and buckets and pistons and rings. And we had a very unusual deal. It was a day job for me. And some of our competition, there wasn't many in our class that were doing it as a day job. Vance and Hines was, but they were still busy doing other projects. Me, George, Bryce, we had a big shop. We had 15 guys working, and we were figuring out how to go fast every day. But we worked on lots and lots of customers' engines. We worked on circle track car engines. Even in the early 90s, we did some pro stock car stuff, and then I stayed connected to some R&D projects with some pro stock car teams, and I always have with some cup teams, which has been very enlightening for me. But it's given me a background position and a backdrop to learn some stuff. And I want to tell you some interesting things that we learned during this time. One, and I don't have any particular order that I want to spend on it, but I'm going to move this over a little closer, and I'm going to try and maybe bring out some of this stuff. But one thing that was very interesting for me was the contracts that we had with Team Winston. I want you to understand this team was R.J. Reynolds Tobacco Company out of Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and they had a skyscraper with lots of floors, and there was one floor called sports marketing, and there were 100 people working in the sports marketing team, and they had this great deal put together with Gary Selzy and Alan Johnson with Team Big Red. The top fuel car looked just like this, and the top fuel car looked just like our red and white. And it was these people's job was to spend their money in a way that would move the marketing needle. It would move the sponsorship needle. It looked like a tachometer. It's like, or speedometer. If you're going fast, the needle was moving, and they would push harder. And if we would start slowing down in our marketing efforts or in our exposure efforts, then they would stand on the gas and lean on us and push us harder. And one quick story I want to tell you that we were at the beginning of the Winston deal, and we had just gotten our first red and white bike done. They gave us stationery. They gave us business cards. I mean, I still wear their clothing that they gave me back then. It's crazy how good that deal was. But back in 98, we were at 99, I think it was. We were at a motorcycle drag race, and Dave Schultz was there testing, and we were testing. And I think Dave Schultz, the late Dave Schultz, was running the Sunoco bike against, let's see, it was Ron Ayers on the Mac Tools bike, and Jackie was videoing it. Jackie, my wife, had the video camera going, and the bike was going down the track, and Ron Ayers shut off, and Dave kept going. Jackie filmed it, and she came back to me in the staging lane. She said, "George," I said, "What?" And she said, "Dave's got an extra gear." And I said, "What?" "Yeah, Dave's got an extra gear in his motorcycle." I said, "What are you talking about?" She said, "He shifted 5 times. He has 6 gears." So I ran and looked at the rule book, and it said, yeah, 6 speeds were allowed. And I'm like, well, nobody's got a 6 speed. And why do we need a 6 speed? And I got to tell you, back then in 98, 99, we were making the clutches tight. I mean, like, tight. People were throwing chains off. Chains wouldn't last any time. We were eating teeth on sprockets. We were breaking clutch plates. We were doing the burnouts in a real high gear, and we had to make the clutch tight so you could put it in high gear to do your burnout, and the clutch would burn up in the burnout if you didn't make the clutch tight. So Dave always did a great job with his clutch. He would let it slip a little bit, and you could hear him slip on the shifts a little bit. And this is important for today. This is also important from my memory of history to share this with you, because it is that trend of controlling the clutch and the engine speed and the tire speed has continued to climb like a dyno chart. And we went to Denver that year and ran the Winston bike, and I realized going to Denver how hard it was to run there. When you're half a second slow, you're down 20% on power, which was about 50 horsepower for us. So what we would do is we'd put the biggest sprocket we could on the back of the motorcycle, and we would launch it at 10,000 RPM, and it would die. And then it would go through the gears, and we would over-rev 5th gear at the finish line, and then Angel would hold it till it hit the limiter, and then she'd roll the throttle off to keep it off the limiter. And if you watch NHRA on TV today, you can see almost every run when the pro stock cars run, they have gotten so good with the gear ratios that they go 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, at the finish line. And they almost need one more gear, but the rules say they can only have 5. So they gear them for all acceleration, and they still go big speed, but they're always in the limiter, and the NHRA has a limiter of 10,500 RPM for them. So when I went to Denver that year, 1999, I said, uh-oh, we're going to get run over because Vance and Hines has got 6 speeds, and we don't. So they could have a better 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and then stick it in 6th and outrun us. Well, we geared it to the moon. We geared that bike to the moon. We ended up qualifying top 2. I think we ended up winning the race that year. And for the rest of the year, I complained about the 6 speed. So Winston said, well, what are you out of money? I said, well, yeah, we don't have it in the budget to buy some 6-speeds. And they said, well, how much do you need? So I called Byron Hines. He had 6-speeds. I called him up. Hey, I said, hey, we want to buy 3 6-speeds. He said, okay, well, we're sold out right now, but we're going to have some more available after the first of the year. And I said, oh, cool. He said, call me back the 1st of January, early in the month, and I'll go ahead and build you 3 and get them out to you. And I said, okay, that's great. So Winston says, what'd you do about the 6-speed? And I said, I called Vance and Hines and I ordered 3. He said, oh, okay, is that where you get them? Yeah, they're the only ones that got them. Okay. So I was so excited. I waited a week into January. I guess it was about 7th, 8th of January. I called Byron back. I said, hey, man, I'm ready for my 6-speeds. He said, oh, man, we sold out. And I said, what? He said, yeah. I said, well, you told me I could have 3. And he said, well, it got so popular and we got a lot of customers. So all we had, we sold to our clients. You know, first come, first serve. And I believe our engine customers probably get, you know, they probably get in front of you. Wouldn't you do it that way? I said, yeah, I'll do it that way. I was so mad. So I called the Winston people and they said, well, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I called. He said, I said, well, you call NHRA and ask them to make Vance and Hines sell me a 6-speed so we can compete. And the guys at Winston said, do what? Call Vance and Hines and call NHRA and make them make a company sell you some parts. No, we're not in that line of work. I said, well, what should I do? And he said, why don't you build your own 6-speed? I said, oh man, I don't know how to build a 6-speed. They said, well, you need to do it. And I said, okay. I hung up. I called Craig Liberty, my friend at Liberty's Gears. And I said, Craig, can you build us a Suzuki Pro Stock transmission? He said, well, I'm sure I can. I said, I have a 5-speed. I have a set of cases. And, you know, the 5-speed works good. We get it from Jack O'Malley at Orient Express or from Bill Robinson or whoever it was we were getting those billet 5-speeds from. Same ones they use in the Pro Mod bikes today. And I sent him the stuff, and he called me up. He said, okay, I'm going to give you a price. I said, what? And he said, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll sell you 3 of them. The first 3, they're going to cost you $76,000, and you got to pay in advance. And I said, what? And he said, and every one you buy after that will be $3,200, $3,000. And I said, good grief, why so much for the first? And he said, well, it's a lot of work to build the first 3. And I said, so they're going to cost me $25,000 a piece for the first 3. He said, yep, that's the only way I can do it. And I said, okay. So I called Winston up and I said, hey, I can get 3 built in 6 months and it's going to be $76,000. And they said, okay, check will go out next day air. I'm like, what? So I called Craig back and I said, okay, money's on the way, build the transmissions. Well, after that, the rest has been history. Now it's a really good product. Lots of people run the Liberty 6-speed transmission. And then when S&S came out with the Pro Stock V-Twin in 2003, of course, they went straight to Liberty. I brought them the Winston cases and the Winston transmission to S&S when I went there in the year 2000 when I went to S&S to propose to build an NHRA Pro Stock motorcycle. And I brought my cases and my transmission with me. And I said, this is what we have to start with. So S&S sent it to their engineering department. They made the transmission wider and they put 6 gears with a little bit more width to them because the 6-speeds were scary in the little Suzuki transmission case. It was narrow, so we had a little baby narrow gears. So S&S made it bigger and made a nice big 6-speed. But what was funny about it is I found out right away that wasn't the line of work they were in, but they wanted us to win. They had rules. Another time in Houston, me and Angel and the Star Racing team, we were running the Winston bike at Houston, and we qualified #1 by a 10th. Friday, first run, Friday, both runs we were ahead. Saturday, first run at 12 o'clock, we were ahead, and we were #1 by a 10th. 4 o'clock Saturday afternoon, it got hot and humid. Conditions went into crapper, man. I mean, it got hot and humid, and there was nobody going to go faster unless they were holding something in the bank. So I put the bike in the trailer, and I told Angel, go to the tower and talk on the PA while the Pro Stock bikes run. I said, the Winston people will love it. The fans will love it to have the champion or the soon-to-be champion on the mic and explaining what was happening in the Pro Stock category. Everybody loved it. So we were about done, and the Winston captain came out of the Winston suite and came over to me. He said, what are you doing? I said, I'm watching the runs. He said, how come the Winston bike's not out here? And I said, oh, we're saving parts. He said, you're doing what? I said, we're saving parts. He said, why do you need to save parts? You don't have enough parts? You're out of money? I said, no, I got enough parts. I said, but we qualified number 1 by a 10th. He said, I don't care if you got a minute on the field. We pay you to drive that motorcycle up and down this racetrack. We want you going down in front of both bleachers, going fast. I don't care if you go fastest or not, but you got to run the Winston bike. And then I want you to tow it back in front of the bleachers and go back to the pits. Don't be hiding that bike. That bike, the only reason we're doing this bike is so the Winston name gets on TV, gets in the magazines, and we get to see it, exposure. And that's the day I found out about the Joyce Julius report. That's what they used as their barometer. Now, you can still find it, and they do it a lot different now than they used to. But back in the day, man, they kept minutes. Like, they had every race. Winston would buy a deck from Joyce Julius. It was a company that would compile in-focus time, background time, mentions, whenever they would be on the TV, whenever the voiceover on the PA, everything had a value. In-focus time or on FaceTime was each minute, each second was worth thousands and hundreds of dollars, and they would give you a scorecard at the end of every race. And I was like, oh my gosh, we got to win this. Winning the races is cool. Winning the Willies is cool, but this is how, when you win the Willies at NHRA with the Team Winston bike, then you get a big scorecard over here on the Joyce Julius report. And I didn't know this at the time because I was just a baby in motorsports. All I did was figure out how to go fast. So anyway, they said, we need Joyce Julius time. We need a report where we are getting more screen time than anybody with a pro stock motorcycle. And if you can, we want more screen time than anybody with a pro stock car, top fuel car, funny car. You got to get time. You got to get mentions. You got to get name recognition. We have to see the logo. And we had to learn that stuff fast. So I also found out that we had to have a backup driver in the queue that was queued up, approved by Team Winston. We had to have leathers done, and we had a couple of guys that we picked. There were no girls, but we picked a couple of guys that could ride the Winston bike. They could ride my motorcycle, and they had Winston leathers, and they had to be available on an overnight, one-night thing. Like if Angel got hurt in an accident or she broke her leg snow skiing or something, she couldn't show up with a Team Winston bike. They did. I didn't even know it was for my safety, because in my contract, they had a specific point in the contract that said, if you fail to attempt to qualify at an NHRA national event, it will be a $40,000 fine per event. $40,000 fine. Okay, me and Jackie, right? We're going, oh, 40,000? Oh, we're going out of business. So I called him up and I said, tell me, what does that mean? What does that mean if I fail to attempt to qualify? I said, tell me how I attempt to qualify. I said, the motorcycle shows up at the race. You pull it, you go through technical department. You pull it around the tower. When it's time for the pro stock motorcycles to run and it's your time, you plug the starter motor in to the motorcycle and you go click, click, click. And if it doesn't start, you have at least attempted to qualify. But if you don't show up to the facility, you don't show up with the motorcycle, you don't show up with the team, and you don't show up on the property entered in the event, it was an automatic $40,000 fine per event. And I don't know if you guys remember this, but back in 98, 99, 2000, there was a rule that if you get caught cheating or you get a run thrown out or you get busted at the scales or you get busted at fuel check, it was 5 race suspension. 5, 40, 80, 120, 160. That's $200,000 if I get busted for scales or fuel or any reason. Anyway, Jackie and I would go out of business and you would have never seen us again. So you just got to understand, we never broke a rule. People were accusing us of cheating. They said that we would go across the scales and we were so light that NHRA was getting paid big money by our team. Our competitors told us later in years that they thought that NHRA was giving us an advantage with weight and giving us an advantage with fuel. Little did they know that if there was any potential negative press for this team, that we would go down the drain. Because let me tell you something, when you're doing this kind of company and you're selling this product, there is no room for additional negative press. And it darn sure can't come from this guy and the guy that owns this company right here. This would be out of business for me and Jackie. So they had huge expectations We were able to secure that sponsorship for 4 years, and we were able to win 20 NHRA national events with Angel on the Winston bike and the S2 bike for the 4 years that we were at race with him, which was an incredible opportunity for us. I also learned about how to win and how to get more Joyce Julius time. We had 5 engines for the Winston bike. We had A, B, C, D, E. A was our very fastest engine. B was the next fastest. C was the next fastest. E was so slow that I would only put him in if everything blew up. Like if I got something wrong with oil or I got something wrong with what we were doing, we had to go and just mow through these to stay in. Because if I failed to attempt to qualify, or they found out how many runs each run was worth, and if I didn't make a run, I got penalized out of my pocket. And even my team didn't know some of this stuff. But I got to tell you, A was so fast that we left A at home in the dyno room. I didn't even bring A to the racetrack because if I lost my way, if I did not know why A was fast or B or C or D or E was fast, if I forgot, like I just screwed up going down the wrong road with the cams and the pistons and the rings and whatever idea, my crazy idea, trick of the week for how to go fast with a pro stock motorcycle, if I messed up and I blew up A and all I had was B, then I wasn't going to win these and I wasn't going to get a good report card from the Joyce Julius report. So I left A in the dyno room, and if I ever felt like I got lost, like C, we would dyno C a lot, and we would dyno D a lot. And E, I didn't need him unless I needed him. But C and D were my horses. I rode these guys like mules. B was for Sunday. I would qualify with C and D, and then I'd put B in for Sunday, and we would roll over them. Like I said, we got 20 wins. We did lose some races, but we won a lot of races in the 4 years we were together. But A was at home as my benchmark. That was my perfect blue ribbon recipe, because if I got lost and this engine didn't make power one day or this engine didn't make power one day on the dyno, I'd say, go take B off, put A on. Put A on the dyno, and if it was down 10 horsepower and I hadn't moved it or touched it, it was the dyno, it was the weather, it was the conditions, it was the testing. It wasn't what we were doing here. So if A was still within 10 of where he was, then I needed to work on B, or I needed to forget about it because A was down the same amount B was. Anyway, that was just a story about R&D and testing. And I wanted to tell you how great it was to go through these opportunities and learn about the potential penalties, the rules, the no sitting on the sidelines, the contract stuff, and the huge expectations they had. They had huge expectations. They said, if you cannot give us what we want, we're going to go find something else to spend our money on. And they were a really big team. Like I said, there was 100 people on that team. Now, for all of you guys that follow me every week and look at stuff that's not always Tech Talk Tuesday, I wanted you to see this bike. It was cool. I wanted you to see this one. That's cool. And also, I talked to you a lot about the Milwaukee 8 rocker arms and the difference between roller rocker arms and the roller tip rocker arms. But this is the factory rocker arm for the Milwaukee 8. I want you to look at this. This is a really big radius right here. If you tried to make a roller this size, I think the wheel would be really, really big. So I'm not a big fan of putting a tiny roller on here because I don't see any friction. I don't see any wear. The tips of the valves look perfect, and this rocker arm looks perfect. I can grab any one of them. Let me try and focus on it. I don't know how to do it. Anyway, I'm struggling here for a minute. But I just want you to see how good this wear looks. And I also want you to notice that this is a big radius. So S&S makes roller tip rocker arms that replace this. But listen, it can't, that wheel out here on 2 fingers, they have two struts with a wheel. They wiggle, they twist. It can't be. Well, that scared me. I don't see how it could be stronger than this. This is a giant, fat, streamlined, strong, oil squirting, spring cooling, radiused finger follower that I don't see anywhere. I don't see anywhere on the valves. Enough of that rant. We'll make a quick guess, a quick quick update here on Blue 5.0. I know I've been giving you some updates along the way. I showed you that I put the drag bars on it. Finally, I got my billet swing arm on. And I wanted to tell you that we're changing out this belt. It has belt, 32 teeth on it. The rear belt, I think, has like 66 teeth on it. This stuff is really heavy. We've got an aluminum sprocket, specialty sprocket to go on the Hayabusa rear wheel. And we got the 25 tooth front sprocket, 3/4 offset, so that I can get the chain around the big tire. It's a 180 tire. 17 fits a Busa wheel. Anyway, that's the updates on that. I wanted to keep you up to date on that so that we can, and we got heads on for good now. So that'd be awesome to finally get to see how that turns out. And over the Christmas holidays, I'm gonna work on getting the pipe to fit. I've made the exhaust port really big to fit the big pipe. That's a sneak peek. But listen, you guys, this is a 580 cubic inch V8, and the 2 intake valves are big enough to equal a 2.4 intake valve. So it's a 4,600 bore, like a big block Chevy, with a 2,400 intake valve, and it's got a 4.375 stroke. So it's a 580 V8. Thank you for your time, you guys. Thank you for watching. It's been great. Remember, please, everybody, remember the next few days. The reason for the Christmas season is a birth of our Savior, Jesus Christ. That's the reason we have Christmas. Everybody has a different idea of why we have Christmas, but I want you to remember the reason for this season is the Christ in Christmas. May God bless y'all. Amen. Have a great week. I'll see you next Tuesday.